Hello. So finally we get down to actually writing some code. The program we write today will output the perimeter and area of a rectangle given the length and width of a rectangle. If you don't know what the area of a rectangle is, it's simply the length times the width, whereas the perimeter is both lengths plus both widths, so 2 length plus 2 width. Let's begin. The first thing we will do is create 4 variables called length, width, perimeter, and area. So typically when we're creating a variable in C++, this is the format we use. So valid C++ type, valid C++ type followed by some name and a semicolon. Yeah, well, it's semicolon. And this is how we create a variable. A valid C++ type can be a double, an integer, a float, a boolean, a string, or a char. But in our case right now, we've only seen the double. So what is the double? So I'm sure you know that an integer is a whole number from negative infinity to positive infinity. In C++, obviously that is smaller because we have to work with memory. A float is essentially, well, it is a decimal number. A double is a more accurate float in that you can store more numbers after the decimal point. What we've done here with these 4 variables is we have declared them. So what that means is it essentially says to the system to allocate memory space and respectively name memory space length, width, perimeter, and area. But those memory spaces, even though allocated, can only store memory for a type double. Next, we'll use the cout statement, and this is called an extraction operator. And anything that appears in between 2 extraction operators, so we notice we have one here and our second one here. Any valid C++ type that appears in between 2 extraction operators will be output to our screen. So we program will compute area and perimeter of a rectangle. Yep. Second. Okay. And we'll use an endl. The endl simply states end of line. So our next line of code will appear on the next line instead of continuing from this line right here. Whenever we end a C++ statement, we must add a semicolon. Notice we have a semicolon here and the 4 lines above right here. When something appears in between 2 inverted, once again, how do we call inverted commas? What are these called? I'm just gonna, okay. I know that these are called double quotes. So anything that appears in between 2 double quotes, so anything in between 2 double quotes is what we call a string. Let's get rid of that. Anything that appears in between single quotes will be a single character and will eloquently be called a char. So it appears in between single characters, it is therefore a char. Right. We will now just do some basic assignment statements. So we'll say length is equal to 6.0. So above, as I said, these are declaration statements in that they declare memory space for the following types respectively. This assignment statement assigns a value of 6.0 to length. So what it basically does is it instructs the system to store 6.0 in the memory space allocated to the double length right here. Let's carry on with this fashion and say that width is equal to 4.0. We'll calculate the area and we'll say length times width. This statement right here. This statement instructs the system to evaluate the expression length times width and then store that result in the memory space allocated to area. So what it does is it reads from right to left. It will calculate length times width, so this times that, which will be 6 times 4, which will be 6, 12, 18, 24, and allocate that value to length, to area. We will also calculate perimeter, and say it is, let's go 2 times length plus width. Same thing again, it'll vary it from right to left. First, it'll add up length times width, which is 6 plus 4, which will be 10, and it'll multiply that value by 2, which will be 20. This operator right here is equal to multiplication. We will again use cout with our extraction operators, and anything that appears in between two extraction operators, so long as it is a valid C++ type, it will be output the screen. Length is equal to, and we'll use length, and we'll use another endl. Now notice, in between two extraction operators, so we have our first extraction operator here, our second extraction operator here, and in between them we have a string that will be output to the screen. And then if you consider it again, we have a first extraction operator here, a second extraction operator here, and what appears in between will be output to the screen. In this case, the variable length. I'm sure you've seen right now the purpose why we use variables. It makes writing our code much easier. It makes it much easier because whenever we need to reference something, we can just use the variable name instead of writing the whole statement again. So instead of me saying everywhere 6.0 plus 4.0 to get perimeter, I just say length. And we will copy this line, and we will do a copy and paste, which I suggest you don't do, you actually write the code. Right, length. Do as I say, not as I do. And we'll change this to width. width. We'll call this perimeter. We'll use a capital. We will call this area. As always, after I post a video, if you leave a comment in the 15 minutes after I release the video, I will do my best to answer any questions. Perimeter. As for this return 0, you may not know what it does right now, but we'll get to that at some point, I promise you. Just think of it as if we didn't have this, our program would not run. Now, let me just tell you, whenever we have a function, which you don't know what it is right now, but when we have a function, we must return a value if that function is not a void function. That's it. And this function just happens to be an int function, so therefore it must return an integer. The integer that's been returned will be 0. Let's save our program. We will do a build. Okay, build has been done, and we will run. There's our program. Program will compute area and perimeter of a rectangle, length, width, perimeter, and area. There we go. We press any key to continue, and we are done. See you guys in the next video. Speak to you guys in the next video.